So many ask how Firo's development is being funded. And of course, there are several ways to actually fund a crypto project. One, of course, is to just hope people will dedicate their time to work on it full time. Another would be is to do an ICO, what we call initial coin offering. And I guess the others would be to get like a venture capital or some kind of seed investors to invest in. And the one that we use is actually we take a percentage of the block reward, which is 15%, and that works out to be about 16,000 Firo a month. And that runs everything, from our development, from our infrastructure, and that is the primary way that we're funded. Of course, we also get very generous donations from our supporters and friends, but it's always good to have like a steady source of income. And I would say that, there are, of course, many who would say, oh, it's a death tax, this is really bad. And I would actually argue that the development, like in a percentage of a block reward, is one of the most fairest ways to continuously fund development, especially as a smaller project. And if you think about it, if you want to build a world-class project, you need full-time developers, cryptographers, and researchers. And you can't really dedicate, like, if you want to do groundbreaking work, you can't really do it part-time. And some might say, well, what about Bitcoin? All right. Bitcoin doesn't have any sort of development fund and stuff like that. Why don't you follow a model like that? Well, first of all, if you take a look at how the contributions to Bitcoin, about 85% of all the commits actually come from full-time developers that are being paid to actually, develop Bitcoin, with like 15 to 20% coming from, one-time or part-time contributors. So it means the bulk of the work comes from full-time paid people. Now you're thinking, well, how are these people being paid, right? They are being funded by, special interest groups, by people who want to see Bitcoin succeed. But it also means that the development is potentially influenced by the people funding these full-time developers. And we have seen, like this debate about, the direction of Bitcoin now, and some people feel that it's been captured. But instead, while people might say, oh, a development tax is bad because it centralizes control, it's a way to get the development fund, the developers on it really rich. But first of all, it's disclosed, and it aligns the interests of the developers to the long-term future of the project. We don't get like huge amounts of funds upfront, meaning we can't, there's no point for us to exit scam. And the more that we develop, the more that the value of the project increases, the more that resources that we have to work. Obviously, there are downsides to having a development tax. I guess the biggest one would be, we are seen as a centralizing force. But I think at this stage of development, we hopefully will not need to have to, do this forever. We, obviously are now getting, I guess, 50% of our funding from donations. If we can move to 100% donation model, that would be great. Or there'll be other methods that, we can make money from. But at this stage of development, while we are trying to build out, really exciting protocols, we do need a consistent source of income to attract talent. So I hope that people understand, it's not a lot of money that we're getting. And it really makes sure that we are acting in the best interest of the project. And centralization issues aside, I do think it's, I would say it's probably the fairest and I guess most transparent way to keep a project funded without, having any sort of like preferential treatment and stuff like that. And if any case, if, the community feels that the dev team is not doing a good job, then, the project also suffers. So, yeah, it all aligns together. So I hope that explains how Firo is funded and why the choice of how we're funded is being made.